Welcome to CRIME-ALYZE, as in analyze a crime. Today I will crime-alyze the case of Craig Becker. Craig Becker was a U.S. Navy explosive ordnance disposal officer stationed in Mons, Belgium, and one evening he found out that his wife had somehow jumped out of the 7th story of their apartment in Mons, Belgium, and she ended up being deceased after this jump out of a window sometime late in the evening. Let me give you a summary of the case and then I will analyze it. On October 8th, 2015, 32-year-old Swedish psychologist Johanna, also called Hana Becker, tragically died after plummeting from the window of her 7th-story apartment in Mons, Belgium. At the time of her death, she was living with her husband, Craig Becker, who was a U.S. Navy explosive ordnance disposal officer who was stationed at a nearby NATO facility. The couple's marriage had deteriorated significantly, and Hannah was actively planning to leave the relationship. Craig Becker maintained that he was entirely innocent, claiming that Hannah was experiencing severe psychological distress and deliberately jumped from the window to take her own life. So this whole matter was first investigated by the Belgian police, and the Belgian police in turn turned the case over to the U.S. military. U.S. military investigators grew deeply suspicious after reviewing the forensic timeline. A toxicology report revealed a highly volatile mixture of substances in Hannah's system at her time of death. Alcohol, the heavy opioid painkiller tramadol, and zolpidem, also commonly known by the brand name Ambien. So those three were found in her blood. Crucially, forensics confirmed that Hannah had no legal medical prescription for Ambien, nor had she any history of using that drug, Ambien. Investigators subsequently discovered that Craig Becker had secretly acquired the unprescribed sedative, which is Ambien, immediately prior to this fatal incident. Prosecutors argued a chilling theory that Craig had covertly spiked Hannah's drink that evening with the sedatives to incapacitate her before physically pushing her out of the 7th-story window. So that was the theory of U.S. military investigators who investigated this case. Because Craig was a U.S. military service member stationed abroad, the case fell under military jurisdiction. So, in April 2022, a U.S. military court-martial rejected the defense's claims of suicide, and they officially convicted Craig Becker of premeditated murder. Craig Becker was sentenced to life in prison at the military facility in Fort Leavenworth. The case's conclusion. When we evaluate the tragic death of Hana Becker under a forensic lens, the core question hinges on the strict legal standard of proof. Based on the psychological and circumstantial timeline, do I believe Craig Becker is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. So let me tell you what I think. Personally, I believe significant reasonable doubt remains. The history of the United States justice system is marked by cases where individuals have served 30 years or more in prison only for subsequent evidence to prove their absolute innocence. Condemning a man to life in prison requires an exceptionally high threshold of certainty. In this case, we lack absolute, undeniable proof of direct physical intervention by Craig Becker when we examine all of the evidence. From a behavioral perspective, if Hana Becker wanted to escape a toxic marital environment that evening, she had viable alternatives. Hana Becker could have contacted her partner, her other partner, which is her lover, because at the time she had a lover, or she could have reached out to her relatives in Sweden, which she had, meaning she had relatives in Sweden, or she could have reached out and checked into a local Belgium hotel that evening if she wanted to get away from Craig Becker that evening and for the rest of the month. Furthermore, forensics confirmed that Hana had no legal prescription for Ambien, which is also officially referred to as zolpidem. While the sudden presence of this sedative and tramadol in her system points an arrow of suspicion toward Craig Becker, in my opinion, it does not entirely eliminate other variables. It is possible that Hana Becker acquired the medication through an unverified off-record source. We can look closely at the linguistic patterns of Hana's final text messages, which Hana sent out that evening. If the syntax and tone of these text messages diverge drastically from her usual writing style, it implies someone else authored them. So I'm not sure what the linguistic style of these text messages is that Hana had sent off that evening. Yet, without definite forensic confirmation, this remains speculative. In a court of law, we cannot convict a human being based on speculation. And in this case, in my opinion, Craig Becker was convicted based on speculation. The legal standard demands proof beyond a reasonable doubt, not a mosaic of suspicions. Because that gap exists, the threshold for a lifetime conviction has not, in my professional opinion, been met. But my analysis is only one side of the coin. Now, the final verdict belongs to you, my viewers. Head over to my comment section and tell me if you think that Craig Becker is guilty or not guilty. So what I'll do for the next upcoming episodes is I will do a channel community tab where all of you can officially vote, but for now you can give me your vote in the comment box below. So tell me guilty or not guilty, meaning is Craig Becker guilty or not guilty? You can start with that. Just type guilty or not guilty, and then you can, if you want to, you can also tell me your reason why you think he's guilty or why you think he's not guilty. It would be great to hear your reasoning. So if you can, then I encourage you to write me your opinion on why you think he's guilty or not guilty. In my opinion, he's not guilty, not because I think he didn't do it, but because there's not enough evidence to conclude that he did it beyond a reasonable doubt. So that is my reasoning. Thank you for analyzing this case together with me today. Please subscribe so that you don't miss my next case profiles on this channel called CRIME-ALYZE. And I will see you in the community comments in the future. And for now, I will see you in the comments below. See you soon.